Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I see the quick exit crowd are already on the left, so just in case it gets boring, you can just slide up the stairs. My name is Mark Thorpe, and I have a passion for sharing about the mining business and for sharing about ecology and sociology. And it just happens that that goes very nicely together with cruising, as we can explore different things as we go along the coast. So we've headed down from San Diego. You missed my talk on Los Cabos. I do have a very nice talk on Los Cabos, but they didn't manage to program it in. Just in case you're trying to figure out where I came from originally, I'm from England. My accent is a real mess because I left about 40 years ago. I grew up in a small coal mining town in the center of England, and my grandpa was in the mining business, my dad was in the mining business, my uncles, my friends went from school, and naturally I joined the mining business. I did not want to be a miner, so I did ecology and I did mostly ecosystems and social stuff, so I did everything in the mining business that nobody else really wants to do. So I did environment, community, health and safety, a little bit of government relations, well, a lot of government relations. And my wife calls me Brit-ish because I left 40 years ago and I've lived on all 4 continents I've worked in more than 30 countries on over 100 projects. So this afternoon, we're going to have a look at Guerrero, Estado Guerrero, which is one of the states in Mexico. We'll give a little bit of an overview of that. We'll have a look at what mining means to that state, and we'll have a little bit of a look at what we want to do for community development. And I had the pleasure of actually being the general manager at this mine that we're going to look at this afternoon. And that was from about 2015 to 2019, just after the build, all the way through to full operations, and some of the community fun that we had initiating community development. First, before we started, I wanted to show you a little bit of where we were yesterday. This is from my Cabo talk, and this is 1950, Los Cabos. If you look right here, you'll see the tuna packing plant. We were docked somewhere out here. This is Land's End. And where we came in right past that tuna packing plant on the tenders yesterday. This is 1950. There were about 400 people. Everything came in from the mainland. It came across the Gulf of California now. And it was dropped off at this port. There was a ferry right here. The only way to get from the north was to fly down or drive for about 10 days on a very, very bad road. And this is what it looks like today. This is where we saw what we saw yesterday. And you've still got that tuna packing plant right there. Just in case you were wondering, if they build it, they will come. They put the marina in the 70s, and they put the highway in, and they did come. And I'll tell you, I have a home here, and I went home yesterday, which was lovely. But there's the old tuna packing plant that you can see right there. And the marina is actually built right here. So it's a fascinating story, it's a fascinating development, and well worth exploring. I'm sure you had a fabulous time. It's lovely, it's safe, food is great, and that's what it looks like today. And it keeps going and it keeps going. Most interesting thing here is how we keep electricity and water in a complete desert to keep up with the population growth. So we'll move on to Estado Guerrero. Estado Guerrero is the heart of Mexico. It's a long, long way. We started up here, we're somewhere off here, and we're going down into Acapulco here. Mexico City is up in the center. Mexico's a really, really big place, and Most of us know Guerrero State just because of the beaches and Acapulco being famous. It was very famous in the 60s and 70s. It was part of the jet set. It was where everybody wanted to go. But it really is quite a mountainous place. If you look at the state itself, you can see this lovely coastal plain, which everybody loves. There's beautiful beaches, there's beautiful places. We're going into here, which is one of the natural harbors. And it was a natural harbor that's been used since the 1700s. It was on the trade routes coming from Asia across, and then they would transport across Mexico and then put it on the ships and get it over to Europe. So it was on the trade routes. And we'll talk a little bit about that in some of the other talks. As you can see here, the Sierra Madres come right down. It's a big mountain chain, has a lot of effect on the weather and the climate. Any of the hurricanes that come in, they really bash the coast. They don't get much further than right about here. You get high winds and everything coming through, but it doesn't get a lot. It's a very mountainous place. There are other things in Estado Guerrero that are important to Mexico. So there's a town called Iguala, which was just about an hour and a half north from the mine that I'm going to talk about this afternoon. And that was where the Mexican flag was developed. So the town that you can see right behind the flag there, this is the actual origin of the Mexican flag in Iguala, and that massive flag flies all day, every day, 365, right over the town of Iguala. But there are also not just these bigger cities. These bigger cities have got fabulous infrastructure. They've got great grocery stores, that sort of thing. But you've also got small towns called Pueblos Mágicos, magic towns. These are the ones that have been designated as kind of a historic area. This one's Cuauhtémoc, and these towns date back 1800s, some of them back as far as the early 1800s, and they're preserved today in the form that they are. But you wouldn't give up on Guerrero until you have seen the beaches. This is Zihuatanejo. It's right next to Ixtapa. You've seen Zihuatanejo, like Ixtapa. Beautiful beaches, a much smaller place than Acapulco that we're looking at. These are built on tourism. Acapulco was originally built on trade and industry. Very important. And then my favorite little town is a little place called Taxco. This is an old silver mining town, and it dates well into the early 1800s, when the silver miners were producing silver here. Mexico was one of the largest producers of silver, still is, after Peru. So please, when you're going into these silver shops and you're looking for a trinket to take home, look for something that's made in Taxco, and I'm sure that you'll be very pleased with the outcome. It's an old town, and they are still mining silver 180 years later. It's a fantastic little place to visit. Now, one of the things that we need to understand about where we're going is the kind of the picture that Guerrero has in the Mexican economy, where it sits in the Mexican economy. It's fairly low on the totem pole. There's 32 states in Mexico. As far as GDP, even with the big industrial developments, it sits 24th out of the 32. The per capita GDP is less than half of the average. And the key industries, unfortunately, are the service sector, particularly tourism. And it's been driven by, obviously, Acapulco and Ixtapa, Zihuatanejo, Ixtapa. But when things go south, tourism goes south. In our case, the mine and the mining business offers an opportunity to ride out the downfalls in economics. And if something gets a little dangerous, especially in Mexico, tourism can go down as well. It's one of the largest states, but it's one of the poorest developed. And just looking at the Human Development Index, which is the kind of the overall evaluation of how humanity in the area is developed, it's 30th out of 32 states. So you can imagine the picture that I'm painting here. You've got a very vibrant piece along the coast with the tourism when it's working well. And you've got high poverty rates, 75% of the population in Guerrero in the interior, most of them in the interior, live below the poverty line. And they have a they're almost 80% of the population is in the informal workforce. So you can imagine trying to build a mine in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure, no skilled labor, and no people. It was quite a challenge. So, where did we do it? We are this is Acapulco, where we're going tomorrow. Up to the mine is about 2.5-hour drive from Acapulco itself. It's up through the mountains. You start off on the plains, you come up through Chilpancingo, and then up onto the mine. A little bit of a closer look at the mine itself. There's the town of Iguala that I told you where the flag was. This little town here is Cocula. It's infamous, unfortunately. Several years ago, about 43 students, I don't know if you recall that, disappeared in Mexico, and they were in Iguala, and they were thought to have disappeared in Cocula. It's a very difficult place to work. The mine itself is in a very isolated area, and it looks a little bit like this. There's the mine footprint. If I go back to the previous, there's the kind of the mine footprint that I'm showing you. Then I'm showing you the enlarged footprint. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at how the mine developed, and we're going to look at this. Wrong button. There we go. We're going to look at the open pit development. We're going to look at a couple of communities called La Fundación and Real de Limón that we resettled over here. And we're going to look at where I used to live in a little town of about 4,000 people called Nuevo Balsas. So we're kind of zooming in from the state level down to the mine-affected communities. We call them mine-affected communities. Why? Because the mine is either right next door or right on top of where the people live. So these mine-affected communities is what we're going to look at today. But first we'll have a look at the mine itself. So this is a very compact area. When I started working, there was nothing here at all. We built the processing plant, which is right in here. This is a dome to stop the dust, so we're looking at environmental concerns. And then this is tailings, and you can see a few water management ponds around the place. And this is a very innovative thing called a rope conveyor, which is essentially like a ski conveyor that takes people up and down the mountain. But it's an actual conveyor belt, and it takes rock down the hill. Now, if we look at the open pit itself, this is gold mining. I was talking to a couple of people just before I started the talk, and they were talking about watching Gold Rush on the TV, right? And they were watching Parker Schnabel and all those guys try and win gold from little pieces. Yeah, the whole of the Gold Rush enterprise would probably fit right into here. This is a very large open pit. We move a lot of rock, and just to give you an idea, just focus on that little thing right there. That's actually a drill, and that's drilling off so that we can blast. We leave these terraces in place for stability and for safety. One of the things that when we go through the Panama Canal, you'll see the Culebre Cut, and you'll see these terraces right next to us, like you have on a highway. And the terraces are for safety and for these purposes, and then we move this rock down to the processing plant. So focus on that little thing like right there. There's another one right here, and that will give you an idea of the scale of it. That's me talking to the mining manager, and in the background there you can see that drill, and there's a person going to be sitting in that cab, so that gives you an idea of the scale. It's about 1.5 kilometers across that pit, and we move a lot of rock down to the mill. So the mining process on a large scale, most of you are probably familiar with panning for gold and the alluvial golds that you see on the television. In this particular case, you have to take all of that rock, the actual ore itself is right here, we're standing on it. You have to blast it, move it, and then get it down to the size of a grain of sand. And to get it down to the size of it, once you blast it, you load it into big trucks, drop it on that conveyor belt that I mentioned, and then it goes into something called a series of mills. There's 2 mills. And these mills this one takes the larger rock, and this one then is the second piece. So it comes through this one and into that one. And the first one acts like your tumble dryer. You know how your tumble dryer lifts up the clothes and drops them? And lifts up the clothes and drops them? Well, that's exactly what this one does to the rock. And if you can imagine, it's lifting up the rock and dropping the rock on itself. And it smashes itself to bits. It's also got some heavy steel balls in there that help. But it acts like the tumble dryer. So lift and drop, lift and drop. The other one, just behind you, that's called a ball mill. And guess what it's got in it? No prize for guessing. It's got balls, steel balls. That acts like your washing machine. Your washing machine tumbles the clothes over in the bottom, right? It doesn't lift them up and drop them. It tumbles the clothes in the bottom. And this tumbles the rock in the bottom, and it gradually grinds it down to the fine powder that we need in order to get into the processing plant. So if you just remember, tumble dryer, washing machine, that's exactly how it works. We'll forget all the engineering, all the details. You don't need to worry about that kind of thing. And it's that simple, but it's also very, very complicated. So we move on to the processing plant. As I mentioned, the rock comes down that conveyor into this big area, and it's dropped into this dome. It's then fed into where the mills are, in this area right here, and then the gold goes into big tanks where it's leached out. The gold is leached out, and it's leached out, and you'll not like this, but it's using cyanide in contained tanks. The cyanide adheres to the gold. You've got 2 fairly simple things that attach to gold. One is mercury, and the second one is cyanide. The nice thing about cyanide, it's carbon and nitrogen, the 2 atoms so you can break the carbon and nitrogen into the carbon and nitrogen, and it's completely harmless at the end. It goes through the processing plant, and then we have this magical place called the foundry. And if you look in the foundry, that's exactly what it looks like. That's the first actual pour of gold from that mine. There's a crucible back here. They melt everything down and they pour the gold, and that's actually what it looks like. It does look like the gold bars that you see on a James Bond movie. Probably not quite as easy to pick up as James Bond always manages to pick up a big bag of gold bars. I can't even lift one with one hand. They weigh a tremendous amount of weight. So it's a fun business, and I've worked in many other types of mines. But this is what we were looking at in Guerrero. Now, in order to get all that built, we had to work with the local communities. And I want to draw your attention to these 2 communities here that are actually, this is La Fundición and this is Real de Limón. And as you can see across here, you've got Real de Limón and La Fundición. These were 2 communities, small communities, very impoverished, and this is the early part of the development of the mine. This is the early part of the development of the mine. Unfortunately, the mine was going to cover this particular part here, and Real de Limón, which is in this area, was also too close. So we had to go through a resettlement. And if you look at what the mine looks like after the resettlement, that's before, and that's after. You can see the 2 communities. Unfortunately, La Fundición, which means the foundry, actually, it's the foundry, and there was a foundry there, and there was mining in the area back in the 1800s. How people found it? Amazing for the geologists. So what we did was we looked at where we needed to build the mine, and then we started negotiating with the communities. And these communities are what is known as ejidos. And they're ejidos because in the 1918 agrarian revolution in Mexico, the land was taken off the rich landowners and was distributed to the people who actually lived in the area. It's a very interesting process because that land was then titled in the legislature, it was registered to the ejidos, And the ejidos then had to divide up the land between the families. Interestingly, in Mexico, you cannot subdivide the family land because it was deemed that if you had a parcel of land, it was enough for you to grow your crops on and you could live on. If you had a half a parcel of land, you couldn't grow enough land. So you couldn't give it to split it between the children. You had to pick one of the children, your favorite, I guess, at the time, who then got the land. Which is different from in Peru. When I worked in Peru, you could divide the land amongst your children, and then you ended up with parcels of land that were actually no good, and you had to farm as a cooperative. You couldn't farm as individuals. In this particular case, there's a very strict and rigid protocol for the ejido land, and you can work your way through this, and it really is a complicated process. We had 2 lawyers working on this for 3 years in order to get it all regularized. And you look at the old towns. This is La Fundación in 2013. La Fundación in 2013 had very limited water supply. It was from hoses that were stretched across the mountainside on the surface. If there was a fire and the hoses got burned, then you had to replace them from a spring. And because of the nature of the area, the spring was also contaminated with arsenic. Now that was nothing to do, this was pre-mine, it was long before everything. But when you get a higher concentration of metals, you get a high concentration of different metals, not just the gold that you're looking for. So in this particular case, latrines were the only toilets. Water was piped across the land, and there were 2 pickup trucks. Actually, there were 10 pickup trucks, but only 2 of them worked in the village, right? And they were on the side of the hill. And they were right on the side of the hill. And Real de Limon, a little bit better organized. There was a cemetery. Cemetery's right here. And this is the Real de Limon. Again, no functioning sewage system. Water was piped across the surface. And in order to get out, it was an 1.5-hour drive on a really bad road out either to Cucula, or if in the dry season you could get out to the main road to the east. So they were sparsely populated, and many of the people in the communities had gone to the north, and when you say to the north, they'd gone to work in the US, and they had probably 70% of the adult males had gone out of the community, and the communities lived on something called remisas, which is the money that's sent back from the US to the communities, and it was wired back into the communities. If you look at the new communities that we built after negotiations, this was all with free, prior, and informed consent. Interestingly, you would think that the 2 communities right next to each other would want to share services and combine to be a bigger piece. Absolutely not. There were family feuds that dated back 150 years, and they were not going to live in the same town as that. And I will not say the expletive that I was used, because... So if we look at the new communities, the new communities are laid out as they wished, on a grid, and we have the 2 different communities. This is the La Fundación community, and this is the Real de Limon community. New churches were built, new schools were built. They do share, we did manage to convince them that they should share a sewage treatment system. So if you look here, there's a nice green patch here. The sewage treatment system for both of them comes over here, and there's a proper functioning sewage treatment system. Obviously, water was put in, and it was piped to each house. The houses went from tin shacks to brick-built houses, 2 bedrooms with electricity, etc. So they were actually very, very nice. Businesses came in, and people were proud of their communities. They were really proud of their communities. You've probably seen, you saw in Los Cabos maybe the sign, and everybody's got these signs now that says Los Cabos this, that, and the other. La Fundación has one of those, right? They were proud of their community. That The area behind it is a basketball court. In Mexico, if you don't have the grass or the land, it was very, very slopey terrain. If you don't have the grass or the land, you build a basketball court. Almost every community, little tiny community in Mexico, has got a basketball court, which is really good because it's not just used to play basketball, but it's also used for dances and parties, etc. So it's a very useful space. And the weather's usually pretty good, so you can do it outside. One of the most important things that we did, and I mentioned that we had lawyers working for us for many years, one of the most important things that we did was we got everybody title to their house. Now this is very important. And it didn't matter in the old community what kind of house you had, everybody got, and they decided they got the same number of bedrooms, but everybody got then a kitchen, a washing area for laundry, and they also got a living area. So if you had a 3-bedroom house before, then you got a 3-bedroom house in the new one, but a bit bigger and nicer. And you can see the house, what the houses look like here, brick on the outside, tiles on the roof, and a little fence around it. Very, very nicely done. We used one of those as, we had an office built for the community development team. But as you can see here, you've got actual, real title to your house. What does that mean? It means you can sell it. It means you can do something with it. Before, it took us a long, long time to get title to all the other houses in place, so that when we could then buy those houses from the people, give them their new house, and then get the new title. Because what happens is somebody dies, and the son or daughter just moves in, and the house never gets transferred across. So we were trying to find, La Abuela, who died, 20 years ago. Well, where's the papers? And she doesn't have it. So we had to do all of the work to make sure that they got the title. And you can see here, obviously, an older lady right above my head has the title to her house. This is a big deal in this particular area. And then obviously, as you can see here, a younger gentleman who has the title to his house, and he's one of our workers, and we hired as many people from the local communities as possible. As an anecdote, I'll tell you that at one stage, somebody came up to me and they said, Mark, well, they said, Señor Marco, but they were speaking to me in Spanish, of course. We would like to thank you because now my uncles have come back from the US to work at the mine, and my aunt now has the family back together again. So we brought all of the families back, and almost everybody that wanted a job at the mine had a job at the mine. So there's other little areas around this little town called Nuevo Balsas. Nuevo means new. It's a new town. And that was a resettled town. You can see right up here there's a lake. This was from a big dam, a big hydroelectric dam was put in. The town of Nuevo Balsas was right in here, right under the lake, and the government resettled Nuevo Balsas. They didn't do the free, prior, and informed consent. The mining company did. They just said basically, oh, you're out, and here's your new house. But they did give them title to the new house, which was good. So this little town, Nuevo Balsas, population about 4,000. When I came to Nuevo Balsas, there were about 400 people living there. It was just almost a ghost town. Everybody had to go out to work. The old mines, and there were some old mines in this particular area here, had closed down a long time ago, and everybody had to leave Nuevo Balsas for various reasons. This river is a very big river, and there were 2 cartels in the area, one on this side of the river and one on that side of the river. So you can imagine how complicated that was for developing the mine. Nuevo Balsas itself, beautiful town. They also liked their sign. This is the band shell that was in there. And having the mine there reinvigorated the town. So people were able to develop catering businesses. We had a catering competition, if you like, on Sundays. Certain of the restaurants in town were invited to cater to the mine, and they brought up their food, and then on a Sunday, for Sunday lunch, they actually came up to the mine and brought their food up to there. And then it got them the opportunity to develop not only businesses, but shops, Saturday market, that sort of thing. And then the whole thing became quite vibrant. One of the things that we looked at, and this was particularly interesting, was that it was on this lake called the Presa Caracol. And right in here there were a lot of fishing communities, and we did look at what we could do for investing in local businesses. So there were some cattle, some sheep in the local area. There was quite a lot of people that were in fishing, and they were not organized at all. They were just people going out and fishing. And what our team found out was that in Mexico, if you organize into cooperatives, you can get supplies of nets and supplies of new motors, and you can get educational people that come out and show you and teach you how to then process your catch. So what we were able to do is we were able to link the existing businesses that are in town and develop some new ones, as you can see on the board there. So we put money into agriculture to improve crops. We put money into fishing. And we also did community development through a mining fund. I'll talk a little bit about that before. And then we gave out contracts for transportation. I lived in Nueva Welsas, but I needed to get up to the mine in the morning. So a little van, 20-seater van, came around, picked me up, and took me up to the mine. And we contracted that out to the local people. And they were able to finance that. And we also did lunches, etc. And it was really a focus on different businesses and different business opportunities that would allow the economy to develop and expand in parallel to the mine, because eventually the mine shuts down. And you don't want to go back to a 4,000 person town having only 2,000 people in it, or even 200 people in it. And it's very difficult to do. What we'll talk about quickly is the mining fund. Where is it? This mining fund here. The government takes a tax on the mines, and they put the money into a mining fund. And in order to get the money out of the mining fund and back into the community, you have to develop projects. Imagine, obviously, rural Mexico, not many engineers or people with a serious ability to develop projects. So we identified that what we wanted to do was we supplied the community with an engineer so that we could get the projects ready and running. So they said, okay, well, we want to add on 2 new classrooms to the school. Our engineer then designed up all the classrooms, did all the documents, etc. The day that the fund opened up, our community was able to go to the office and submit a fully completed project. And we were the only community in the whole of Mexico that did that. The first day the fund was opened up, our projects went in. That week they were approved, and we went ahead and built the 2 classrooms for the school, funded from the government. So you're anticipating what the community needs in order to succeed, which is kind of an interesting way to go. And then it was an investment in the people, not just in the community itself. So we had to navigate the complexities. Obviously, not everybody was happy all the time. That never happens, right? Well, maybe on a cruise, but maybe we were a little annoyed that we didn't get off the ship until noon yesterday. But what we did was we invested in the community. And there's a few little anecdotes that I'd like to tell you. So my community team was about 20 people. And they knew people here and they knew people there and all this kind of stuff. Well, I lived in that little town. And I went for breakfast at this little coffee shop, coffee breakfast shop. I had my eggs, coffee, eggs and bacon, and a piece of toast in the morning. But the senora that owned the coffee shop was better at finding out all the information that happened in the community. So by the time I finished my second cup of coffee, I knew exactly what was going on in the community, and I was able to go back up to the mine and tell my people, oh, we need to do this, we need to look at this, we need to look at the other. So it was a really great place to get all the information I needed in order to then develop these programs that we wanted to do. And one other kind of interesting anecdote, a very influential person at the mine came up to me one day and we were sitting having a Coca-Cola, high test, always Mexican Coca-Cola, so much sugar, couldn't sleep that night or the next night. Anyway, so I had this meeting with David, and David said to me, obviously in Spanish, he said, Mark, you never buy me lunch. I thought, I never buy you lunch. We were investing millions of dollars in different projects and all this kind of, but you never buy you lunch. So I was thinking, okay, I just kind of filed it. I don't buy David lunch. So I got thinking, and I got thinking about the projects that we were doing. And the projects we were doing were these longer projects, big thing. You're going to construct classrooms. It takes you 6 months to construct classrooms. And then you can open the classroom and everybody's like, oh, we opened the classroom, that's great. But in the 6 months, they'd forgotten that we were building the classroom. So I got to thinking about it and I thought, okay, well this is because it doesn't touch him or her. So I developed a very small program, and I told my community team, you had to spend $500 on something in the community each month. $500, nothing. I said, it could be a Valentine's Day lunch. It could be a Mother's Day lunch. It could be pencil crayons for the local kids. About 4 or 5 months after I started the program, David came up to me and he's all smiling. And he said, my niece got a backpack at school from the mine. And it was bizarre because we would do $1 million programs that took a long time to implement. But just a little backpack that was given to a little girl at the mine made a whole lot of difference. So we did that, and they continue to today, building and developing. And the biggest thing that the local community wanted, they wanted more stuff on fish. We actually seeded fry into the, you can see on this top thing, they've got plastic bags, they've got fish in there. They're seeding tilapia into the lake. And then more recently, last year, I think it was 2024, they opened up a fish processing plant. So now they were catching the fish, processing the fish, freezing them, and sending the tilapia fillets off to the supermarkets, rather than just putting the fish on ice and shipping it out. So you can see, as we develop the mine, and this is Jose Luis Peralta he was my right-hand person, and he's still working in the mine today. So you can see, by really thinking about how you can build and leverage, everybody wanted a job at the mine, obviously. It's good pay, it's a nice uniform. Actually, the uniforms, the safety vests became a fashion item. The young women, when they were dating one of the workers at the mine, used to go out on a Saturday night wearing the safety vest of that worker. That was the status symbol. It was quite interesting. So anybody who's got a worker, please, I'd like to see the safety vests around the ship. So by thinking about and interpreting and living with the community, you can understand the community, you can understand the development needs, and you can understand there how to leverage the fact that you've got a big mining operation into something that is more sustainable. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. This is the quebrada in Acapulco. I have sea otters in all my talks, so that's my little idiosyncrasy. You'll see a sea otter woven into everything, and the sea otter in this case is diving into the quebrada that you may see on your tours tomorrow. So with that, thank you very, very much, and I'd like to take any questions. Yes, sir. What was the ore grade? We were digging about 2.9 grams a ton out of the open pit and 4.5 grams a ton out of the underground. Gold, sorry, gold, yes. With some copper credits. Yeah. No silver. It was a copper gold porphyry. Sorry, talking. Pardon? On a big open pit, you can make money at 1.5 grams. Now you can make money at 0.8 of a gram at $5,000 an ounce. Yes, sir.
Got you. What was your revenue per year?
What was my revenue for a year? About.
On the mine.
Oh, we produced a half a million ounces of gold per year. So multiply that by 2,000. A lot.
And
what was our cost? A little bit less than that.
And then for the villages, did they have any sense or carry through our private rights to the mine itself, or was it all moved towards the community projects?
So there was underneath. So I don't know if you remember yesterday when you looked at the beach, when you were looking at the beach area, there was a bunch of hotels, and then there was a big area of nothing, and then there were some more hotels off further to the right as we were looking at the beach. That land there is a Ejido land, and it's in dispute. Okay? So what we did is underlaying the mine were what they call parcelas, which is like areas of land that are owned by individuals or by the Ejido. We did a lease contract for those, and they were paid in gold equivalents from the production of the mine. So the individuals who happened to have a parcel that was under the mine got more money. The ones that were away got a portion of the lease that was actually Ejido land, not individual parcels. So that's how we worked it. Yes, ma'am. So we did not. We built around the one cemetery. There was one cemetery at Real de Limon. We fenced it. We made it all nice. We put in a contract to keep it good, and then we built a new cemetery over between the two new villages. So the one cemetery was preserved, and the second one was not. With the churches, we couldn't preserve the churches. So we took all the artifacts from inside the church, like the altars and all that kind of stuff, and they were reinstalled in the new churches. The new churches obviously were much bigger and nicer. That was your question? Yes, sir.
What is the lifespan expected
At $5,000 an ounce? I honestly, I don't know. They just went underground at 4.5 grams a ton. They were planning to go underground at 4.5 grams a ton at $2,000 gold. At $4,000 gold, a lot more waste goes on. Gold mining is a peculiar business. You never make net any more money because the price of gold goes up, because you just shift the cutoff grade down. You make more gold over the life of mine. I think that the underground had a 12-year mine life that just started last year. I'm not sure. But obviously with the price of gold going up, it'll be great until it comes down again. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the cartels on either side of the river. How did that affect the mine and the employees?
So it didn't affect the mine at all. It was really, really unusual. The cartels recognized the fact that the mine was a source of revenue for the state, for the country, and for the local people. In as much as that we had we had people in the communities who were connected to the cartels, and when we wanted to get a message to somebody, we could talk to that, or if a message might come through the community. But we had no cartel involvement in the mine. It was absolutely amazing. There were things going on outside, but it was all, we were like operating in this bubble, if you like. The cartels would show up every now and then to events, but they wouldn't do anything. They would not do anything, because you know, Mexico is broken up into a lot of different areas with cartels, and they're astute business people. And for the mine itself, I would walk around in town. I never had any worries. I could go get my coffee. I could meet people. I could drive out wherever I wanted to. There were little odd things that happened in town that you went, oh, and didn't ask any questions. But as far as the mine was concerned, nothing at all. It was bizarre, but very pleasing obviously from an operational standpoint, and from the mining company being a Canadian mining company. We had to be we had to be super squeaky clean on everything that we did. We had to do everything by the book, which we did. So that was it. Yes, sir.
Is there more open pit mining or underground?
In that area, actually there's very little other mining in that area. There's an open pit, just that river that I showed you. There was an open pit, an underground mine just to the south of that. That's still operating. And about 5-hour drive to the west is another copper zinc project that's getting started up again. But in Guerrero itself, there's very few older silver and gold deposits, a little bit of copper that dates back. Some of the copper projects date back, and I couldn't believe it. They date back to the 1700s, and it's in the middle of nowhere. Some guy with a mule walked up there and hit a rock and thought, wow, this is great. We'll build a little underground mine here. It's phenomenal. I don't know how they did it. So, yes?
Is there any impact to the local flora and fauna due to the loss of habitat in this mine?
Is there any impact to the local flora and fauna due to the loss of habitat? Yes, of course there is. We can't build a city without, doing that. We can't build a mine without it. The interesting thing, and I'll give you 2 anecdotes related to flora and fauna. 3, actually. We have an impact study. We identify critical components that we don't want to touch, like the rivers and that sort of thing. So we did, in this particular case, we did a dry tailings, what's called dry tailings stack, to make it more stable in the long run. But where the actual footprint was, yes, of course, there's an effect. One of the... Sorry? They're telling me, I'm a little bit over time. No, I'm good. So the interesting thing is that we put what they call cameras trampa, which is the cameras on the field cameras that you put them on the ground, and when animals walk past, it sets off it's a flash. Trail camera, thank you. I can only think of the Spanish name. So these trail cams we put in, and it was very interesting. The population of wild cats, like pumas and smaller ocelots and things like that, was much higher within the mine boundary than off the mine boundary, because they were not hunted on the mine boundary. And where I worked, and we're doing another talk in Guatemala. I worked at another mine in eastern Guatemala. We had howler monkeys, and the mine was a no hunting zone. And the howler monkeys all lived in the mine because it was safer. And so, absolutely, there are effects. There are effects on vegetation, there are effects on soil, but we try and minimize those as much as possible because we still need our metals. And the last thing was when I worked in northern British Columbia, I did a moose survey during hunting season. And we flew a helicopter, we were doing aerial moose survey. And mine was on the top of this big hill. And we had, I remember flying over this area, and it was all snow, and there were just moose everywhere. And we had about 80 moose for the hunting season living on the mine site because there was no hunting on the mine site. So they all come up to the mine site for hunting season finishes, and then they all go back off into the bush. So yes, of course there are effects. There are effects from being on this cruise ship. There are effects from building the mine. We generated millions of dollars in revenues and taxes and employment and that sort of thing. And we did the best we could to minimize it. One of my specializations is in rehabilitation and closure. That's what my PhD is in. I'm a specialist in closure. And I do some really cool stuff for long-term sustainability and closure. You can't, like there are effects, and that's the way it is.
I suppose the question originally, what are we, and you answered that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? So we've got a few more talks coming up. These are the cruise days. I believe they're going to be at 10 o'clock in the morning. We're looking at the secrets along the Guatemalan coast as we come into Puerto Quetzal. We've got a little bit on Central America ecology as we come along through Costa Rica. I may be giving a talk actually when we're up in Gatun Lake on the canal. I'm not sure about that one. They're trying to figure out whether I can give an ecology talk there. And then my last talk will be heading across on the north coast of Cuba. We'll be on that, and we'll look at my wife's favorite title, which is the charismatic megafauna of the Caribbean. So, if you've enjoyed today, thank you for coming along. I've really appreciated taking your time away from the sunshine. Enjoy it, and hopefully I'll see you on day 6 at 10 o'clock.